ever seen a gymnastics competition at the Olympics? I have, and I'm extremely impressed when I see a top-class gymnast perform their routine. And there is one word that kind of strikes me after I finish watching their performance, and that word is balance. Don't worry, I'm not doing a segment on gymnastics or sports. But there is a lesson that top-class gymnasts provide to leaders in organizations. And that lesson is to do with balance. As a leader, we are confronted all the time with balancing competing topics, items, ideas. We're confronted with balancing multiple businesses or functions which are fighting for the same capital. We have to balance the short term with the long term, between pragmatism and purpose, between holding on and letting go, and between stepping in and staying away. These are all things that we need to balance as leaders on a regular, continual basis. But there is one thing I believe supersedes all these things, and that is the ability to balance the unfamiliar with the familiar. Balanced thinking, balanced mindset. For me, this is at the end of the day the most crucial balance that a leader needs to do, particularly in a world which is going to be driven by VUCA. I would like to illustrate this balance need using an example of a proposal for an investment or a business case that many of us have either presented or been presented to in organizations. I always like to begin a bit looking at it from the perspective of how organizations have really templatized this process. In fact, it's gone to a level where many organizations give you a particular template in which you need to fill out all the details of your investment proposal. It's a bit like the US president always having the same color suit in his wardrobe so that he doesn't have to spend his mind power on trivial things like wardrobe choices. Well, I think organization leaders have nothing more important than capital allocation. So I called for a bit more diversity in how we judge investment cases. And I'm not talking about doing away with an IRR calculation or an NPV calculation. I'm talking about the diversity in the strategic questions that are asked. And again, I'm going to illustrate this to you with a question-answer exchange that I have encountered, and maybe you have too. So a question I typically get when an investment proposal is made is, what do we do here that cannot be easily duplicated by another person or another competitor? Strange question, because unless you have a patent, and that too only for the period of the patent, there is nothing that cannot be duplicated by a competitor. In fact, I would even not ask this question from the perspective of judging a business case. The second question that typically gets asked is, how do we preserve our margins for this initiative in the medium term, and how do we continue to grow in the long term? Again, I sometimes get a bit disturbed by this question, because there is no way that we can preserve margins unless we keep doing new things, either with the existing investment or with new investments. And anyway, the product life cycles today are shortening. Is this a question that we should really use to judge a business case or an investment proposal? And the last question that I would like to bring to the table to make my point is something I find a lot is asked, which is, what is the end game of this proposal? To be honest, I abhor this question. In a VUCA world, can we really predict one end game that's going to happen 3 years, 5 years, 7 years from now? When I can't predict what is going to happen a year from now in many cases, how is it possible for me to look that far ahead and give you an accurate prediction? Should we ask this question? Should we not ask the question about what are the various options that could potentially happen when we make this investment, and even ask us for a preferred option? In fact, I often use this line when I'm asked this question. I say, in a fast-growing economy, you don't define an end game, you discover it. Now, if you see the theme of the questions and the answers, now this is a normal exchange that many of you may have had. What I would like to point out to you is the questions were all asked from the mindset, which I would call quote-unquote Western, a bit unidirectional, a bit digital, and a bit gradual. And the answers were all given from the mindset of nothing is permanent, everything changes, there is always refresh and renew, which I would categorize a bit more of the fast-growing Eastern mindset. This is where a leader plays an important role. How is he or she able to balance these two mindsets? Now, the questions are themselves very valid and crucial. They need to be asked. But the same way, the answers that are given also need to be balanced. If there is one thing a leader needs to do, it is to be able to balance these two perspectives, these two mindsets, these two ways of thinking, between what is essentially a Western orientation, which has come through experience or education in many organizations, to what is the reality that's confronting today businesses in a VUCA world. The ability to merge these two and build on these two, for me, is the balance that supersedes all other balances a leader needs to do. And I will make a bold prediction. A leader who is able to balance fundamentally what is inherently a Western and an Eastern way of looking at things, and be able to build a bridge that makes the best of both come out, will be so hugely, stupendously successful. A leader who doesn't do this may not be as successful. At the end of the day, pay attention the next time you see a gymnast perform, because there is a lesson of balance in there for all of us. Thank you. If you have any comments or critique, please do so at the bottom of this page, or you can follow me at the Twitter handle mentioned here. Thank you.